Welcome to the Vancouver True Crime Podcast. In this episode, I'll be explaining the very tragic events that led up to my wife's death. What I hope to achieve with this episode is to encourage people who are suffering from mental health issues to do the best they can at getting help and trying to take managing it very seriously. And those who are caring for someone with mental health issues is also take time to take care of themselves, because taking care of someone with severe mental health issues can be extremely draining and heartbreaking and tiring, and it can take a lot out of yourself. So it's important to remember for self-care for yourself, and it's not being selfish. It's okay to put yourself first when someone else around you is suffering, because if you can't take care of them, who's going to take care of you? So it's important to remember this. So Alexandra was 39 years old when she passed away. Personally, I considered that she died on the 17th of April. On the morning of the 17th, she suffered from an aneurysm. She was rushed to Royal Columbian Hospital, where they performed an emergency surgery for an aneurysm that was bleeding. The bleeding was way too great, and they put her on life support. She couldn't breathe without the aid of the machine. And basically, we spoke to a doctor via video call. COVID has taken root, and the doctor said there was zero chance for survival. They found a second aneurysm, and they believe that aneurysm has been there for quite some time. So basically, they were keeping her alive for one more day for all the family to get together and say goodbye and take her off life support. 6 o'clock, April 19th, we said our final goodbye. I held her hand as they turned off the machine. But in my opinion, Alexandra was already dead, even though her heart was still beating with the aid of the machine. She stopped breathing, really, in the ambulance on the way there. So the day before, the Thursday, we were home. She was home. We thought it would be best if she stayed at home because she worked in childcare, and we didn't know much about this pandemic, and there's lots of germs at daycares and preschools, and we couldn't risk her bringing it home to our kids. Our kids are both have, they'd be at risk. And personally, I was glad she was staying at home because I believe she needed the rest. So that day on the Thursday was a typical day. I remember the weather was nice. It was a nice sunny day. We all gathered in the minivan. We went to the dollar store to buy some craft ideas for the kids. We went to the grocery store, and what I didn't realize is I'd be making her very last meal. The last meal, I bought chicken breast, potatoes, ingredients to make apple crisp, and I made a salad on the side. Potatoes I cut into wedges, cooked in chicken stock, lemon, rosemary, and roasted them in the oven. The chicken breast I grilled in chicken stock, lemon, and seasoning. The apple crisp was made out of Granny Smith apples, cinnamon, brown sugar, butter, oatmeal, and vanilla ice cream. So that night, Alex went up to her room. I slept downstairs in the basement with my 2-year-old son, and Alexandra had Erica, my oldest daughter, in her room. Around 9 o'clock that night, Erica came storming down, all upset, crying, and she was upset because Mommy got mad at her for something. So I said to stay with me for a bit till Mommy calms down. And around about 9:30, I went up with Erica and I opened Alexandra's bedroom door. And she was sitting on the edge of the bed with a pair of tweezers. She was picking at her large toenail very methodically. She looked up at me and I asked her, "Is everything okay? Can Erica come back there and go to bed?" And she says, "Yeah, everything's fine." Erica went in the bedroom. I closed the door. I went downstairs, not realizing that was the last conversation I was ever going to have with Alexandra. So that morning, through the vent, I could hear her crying. And unfortunately, this was not an uncommon thing to hear. At this stage, for the last year, Alex had many panic attacks, crying fits, thoughts of suicide, and severe depression. So I was listening for it to see if it was going to escalate or not, because I wasn't sure if I was going to go up or not. Before I had the chance to do so, her stepson, or my stepson, came downstairs and he said, "I think Mom's having an aneurysm. I already called 911. The ambulance is on its way." So I knew the commotion that this was going to cause, and I decided that it would be best if I stay downstairs with the kids while the paramedics deal with Alexandra. I listened as the paramedics arrived. No, actually, the fire department arrived. They performed CPR. She wasn't responding. And then the first group of paramedics came and she wasn't responding. Alexandra collapsed in the bathroom on the 3rd floor of the house. The paramedics were upset and they felt disturbed by the condition of the house. The house was a 5-bedroom home, quite large, and for the last 2 years, Alexandra was buying things and hoarding in the house. Books, children's toys, clothing for the kids, tables and chairs, more books, lots of stuff from Facebook Marketplace, couches, chairs. At one point we had over 10 sets of tables and chairs. To give you scale of the enormous of the hoarding that took place. After she passed away, I actually hired a crew with a truck, with a construction trailer, to haul it all to the dump. It cost thousands of dollars to remove it all with a team of a crew, and there was enough stuff to fill up 3 moving vans. And I estimated the value of the money that was spent on all this stuff would be in the excess of $30,000 to $40,000. The front door was unable to open, and the paramedics was unable to bring in the gurney through the front door, so they had to go through the back. The stairs were extremely steep, and they were unable to get Alexandra on this gurney and bring her down the stairs due to the steepness of the stairs. And also, Alexandra also, for the last 4 years, have gained quite a considerable amount of weight, so she was quite hard to maneuver. At this stage, she was 5'4" and about 230 pounds. The bathroom was in a design in a way that the door would open, they couldn't get the door fully open because she was in the way. So eventually a second team of paramedics came, and they had to use a chair, which they had to put her into the chair, strap her, and then take her down the stairs. The paramedics were not impressed how the house looked, and they called social services. The social workers at the hospital informed me that they did. And the social workers at the hospital at Royal Columbian were truly amazing, like absolutely amazing. So Alexandra went to the hospital. The fire trucks left, the paramedics left. I'm in a surreal daze. And something strange happened. My neighbor, like 2 doors down, is cutting my lawn, cutting my grass. The grass was a bit long, a little shaggy, but the month earlier was pretty excessive rain. So I went outside, and first I thought, well, maybe he saw all the trucks and was trying to do something nice, but I can tell he looked angry. He looked mad, like he was doing the huff and pushing the lawnmower around, and he saw me, and I can tell that he was expecting a confrontation. And I looked at him and I said, "Hi, thank you so much for cutting my grass. My wife is going for surgery. She just had an aneurysm. It's very nice of you to do this." And I can tell he felt like a piece of shit, like he should have been, because he had no business cutting my grass because it was slightly long. And being 2 doors down, he might have noticed there'd been quite a commotion at the house. They eventually moved not so long after, and I found out things about these neighbors, that they are scumbags and kind of losers, and that's a tale for another time. So Alexandra went for emergency surgery. The bleeding was pretty severe, and the surgeon believed there was no possible way of saving her. They found a second aneurysm, and her brain was in bad shape. Kept her alive for one more day, and then we came in and we said our goodbyes. So let's start at the beginning. Let's go all the way back to 2008. 2008, I was living in Kitsilano. I was working a really good job. I sold software to large school districts, university, government facilities throughout North America. I just ended a relationship. I was single, dating, and I met Alexandra online. At the time, I was 36 years old, and she was 25. We talked quite a bit on the phone. She was quite busy because she was going to school and she was working 2 different jobs. And we kept setting up a time to meet, but for whatever reason, it kept, canceling. Either I was busy or she was busy. So I first started talking to her, I believe it was January of 2008. And then finally, in February, I gave her an ultimatum. I said, it's Valentine's Day. Let's meet. If we have chemistry, cool. If not, at the end of the date, it's all good. We'll go our separate ways. And it is what it is. But it's now or never. So we decided that Valentine's would be our first date. So she met me at my house, and we went downtown. I lived in Kitsilano, and we went downtown to find a restaurant. Now, Valentine's Day, a lot of places require you'd have a reservation. And I thought, just take our chances and we'll just find somewhere. So we ended up on Moxie's on Davie Street. We had the funniest gay waiter I've ever had in my life. This guy hopefully found a good career in stand-up comedy. This guy was absolutely hysterical, and he made the night even more magical with his personality and his charm, and probably the funniest, best waiter I ever had in my life. Amazing guy. I hope he's around somewhere doing well. The date went great. Our chemistry was great. Felt very comfortable around her. She was easy to be around, and liked her very much right away. There was nothing pretentious about her. She was very straightforward. She was very engaging. She seemed to have a genuine interest in what you were saying. The conversation was really great, and our energy just flowed. It was just a nice exchange of energy and ideas and conversation. It was just, perfect date. Spent the night, and since that first date, we were never ever apart. Very often ever since. So we started dating regularly. She lived in Delta. I lived in Kits. She would come and spend the weekends with me. And we had it was a great summer. For that time in February, all through summer, it was a great time. We went to the beach, we went to lots of bookstores, we went out to eat a lot, we went to movies. And there was never any tension or arguing or anything. It was just happy to be together. She didn't care if we went to a 5-star restaurant or we went for coffee. It didn't matter, as long as we did something together. So around August, she told me something that was truly shocking. She said an anniversary was coming up and she was feeling quite depressed about it. And up to this moment, I never saw any type of depressive behavior. She seemed very, always very even keel. Didn't get upset, didn't get mad, but just, she was always a very even kind of a flow of energy with her. And she said she was quite upset. Something terrible happened to her close to this day. Last week of August is a terrible time for her. And I asked her, well, what happened? And she said in 2006, she was online dating and she met a guy named Joe. Real piece of shit, this Joe was. So Joe was a serial rapist, and he had a kind of a way that he would do this. He had his MO would be, he would pretend that he was interested in dating, like he'd want to be their boyfriend. So they went on a few dates, and apparently it was normal. Nothing bad happened. And they slept together, I believe, twice, and no problems. And then he started talking to her about, oh, do you like doing role play and stuff like this? And so he convinced her that he wanted to try out some type of scenario where late at night they'll go meet in some parking lot and they would do a car date. So she would have to drive to some parking lot and meet him. Well, this was all a ploy. And so she met him in some parking lot in Richmond, where he proceeded just to violently rape her in the backseat of his car while he filmed it and took pictures, and and she said that she felt like if she didn't get out of that car, he was going to kill her. He was extremely violent and brutal and vicious. Well, she got out of the car, and she did call the police, and she did make a police report. But see, what this guy did, he manipulated in such a way that he was able to show emails and text messages back and forth that, oh, we planned to do this. This was consensual. It was part of his scumbaggery. And then, on top of that, he would just act like nothing happened, just call her out of the blue, just pretend like, nothing happened. And then other times he would call her and torment her and tell her that, oh, he has STDs and she better get tested. And the pictures he took, he put them on all these different websites and, tormented her, playing all these games. Well, the police did manage for him to stop tormenting her with emails and phone calls. So that was that. And this was really traumatizing. She was and she didn't obviously, don't ever think she really recovered from this incident. It made her do some other bad choices after the fact, get involved in some toxic relationships. And so when she met me, she really wanted a change in her life, because this event in 2006 kind of made her act out and do bad choices. Alexandra was never a drinker. She didn't do drugs. She barely drank. She might drink a little tiny bit. On our first date, she had some raspberry vodka, but nothing excessive. She didn't smoke weed. She didn't do really any drugs. And she wanted to be in a solid relationship. She didn't want to be doing the online dating. But this incident really brought great shame on her, and she did go and try to get counseling, and it just couldn't find the right approach. someone being too direct about it with her would stir up too much stuff. And she also felt that she didn't really get a lot of support as far as from her family. I don't think they really understood how to help her. I don't want to put too much blame or anything on them, but it was a tough situation. It really was. With me and her, we talked about it quite a bit, and I felt the best thing that she could do was focus on her present life and try to build herself up, her self-esteem up through achievement, by achieving something, by working hard, by, doing daily tasks that would give her some satisfaction of meeting a goal. And there was also with her a lot of shame about relationships in the past as well. In a lot of ways, this violent assault was kind of almost like a chain of events that led up to that. She got out of a bad relationship, she was in breakups, and she was kind of rebounding, trying to forget the past. And by trying to forget the past, she was vulnerable to meet a creep like Joe, the piece of shit. Before I move on too, I did do some research on this Joe, and the make and model of his car and his MO. I'm not going to really get into the disgusting acts that he was into, but his same type of crimes and MOs did show up on bad date lists for women that are sex workers that he was targeting also, including sometimes at knife point. It's just too familiar. Too many similarities. Same type of car, described the same type of person, and even the brutal acts that he would do. So definitely, I believe it was the same person. So hopefully he's in jail or dead, or someone's boyfriend or husband, did something to him, because he definitely deserves it. Our system just makes it too easy for these monsters to operate, especially when they know how to do a few tricks to manipulate the law in their eyes, right? So anyways. So moving forward. So this was a huge, devastating thing that happened to her. And I said to her, says, well, you're alive. You're at this time, she was healthy. The best thing you can do is live a good life on your terms. Doesn't make it any less terrible that this happened to you, but how much longer can you suffer? And the more you suffer, probably the more this person enjoys it. So I did my best to convince her the best thing she could do is live her life the best she could, despite what this monster did to her. And that seemed to stick. For the next 6 years, we had a pretty good relationship. We barely ever argued. And if she was mad at me for something, it was probably my fault. I was still binge drinking occasionally, and that, sometimes that wasn't fun for her to be around. And she convinced me to get help for that. So most of our relationship for the first 6 years was, pretty far as the relationship goes, no problems whatsoever. She was there was some issues, but just normal relationship stuff. But there was, things in life that would make anyone depressed or sad. In 2011, her father passed away of cancer, and that was very heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. And then after that, she was depressed, because who wouldn't be? So I felt her behavior was extremely appropriate for what she was going through. We always coexisted with each other very well. We had good communication. We gave each other lots of space. And as I said, I had no complaints regarding the relationship in any regard. She started to get a little bit of anxiety. But a lot of this stuff, again, I felt was appropriate due to some of the stuff she was dealing with. Her father passed away in 2011, and she got a job as a manager for a daycare. And, it was the first time she actually had a job managing a facility. Dealing with the parents, dealing with the licensing, dealing with the staff, hiring, firing, putting in ads in newspapers or internet, running the facility. Few bad employees she had to fire, and, people she didn't get along with, her relationship with her boss, and how it affected her. Sometimes she'd be upset, sometimes she'd be, angry about stuff, but nothing to the extreme. Myself, I was working in a lot of different high-tech startups that were very volatile, dealing with volatile people and volatile situations. So a lot of times I brought my bullshit home. And so when she would be upset about something that happened at work, I tried my best to listen and empathize and offer the best advice that I can. But again, nothing that I felt that was over the top or extreme due to the circumstances. And, she was dealing with some stressful stuff, as many people do when they're running a complex environment that involve people and personalities and responsibilities and such. And I believe she was doing a great job with everything on her plate. She was a hard worker, and parents liked her, the staff generally. There's a few people she didn't get along with, but that's just life, right? Nothing's perfect. So we went to a specialist, and there was, she was getting her physical checkups and, things that women do once a year, and they were concerned about something with her ovaries. So they sent her to a specialist. This specialist believed that she was not capable of getting pregnant. And I didn't really feel any way about it. We didn't really talk about having kids. That was something, she had a child from a previous relationship. But that was just something that never came up. There was never any we got to have kids. So I was just sort of okay, if we have kids, we have kids. If we don't, we don't. I was happy. I was cool either way. I just wanted her to be healthy. But I was concerned that what's going on with her ovaries, some kind of cysts or something. And not so long after that appointment, we moved to North Vancouver. And she goes for a checkup, and the doctor says, I'm going to give you a pregnancy test because her symptoms. And again, she said to the doctor, apparently I can't. I just saw a specialist. So this doctor, on a hunch, says, well, just let me just try giving you this test. Let's see what happens. If it's negative, it's negative. If it's positive, then it's positive. Well, they gave her a test, and she was pregnant. So I was like, okay, well, guess we're having a baby. She started getting regular visits, and one thing they noticed right away is that her blood pressure was abnormally high, and they were concerned that at her age, at this stage, she was 34 years old. So they started giving her a lot of tests, and then she had gestational diabetes. So at this time, we were going to doctor's appointments a lot, ultrasound appointments. There was we had to go to the hospital once a week for testing the heart rate. They would run. So they'd run like a section of the heart rate, and they were concerned about her heart rate. Even at then, she had high blood pressure. Her doctor felt the stress of this pregnancy, with all the other interventions that were going on, was going to cause her anxiety. So the doctor felt it was a good idea that she start seeing a psychiatrist in West Vancouver. And the doctor decided to put her on antidepressants to try to manage the stress of this pregnancy. So it was a busy time, very busy time. We had lots and lots of appointments. Ultrasounds. She went seeing a specialist, gynecologist. Gestational diabetes, the psychiatrist appointment. The regular going in the hospital, get her blood pressure monitored. And we went to prenatal classes once a week. So it was quite busy. Erica was born in December. It was a tough labor. She was in labor for a long time. And she was up for almost 24 hours by the time Erica was born. But Erica was healthy. We went back home and we had a new baby. We ended up moving out to Langley, Surrey, Clayton Heights area with Erica. And Erica was a pretty non-eventful baby for the first year. She was a pretty mellow baby. Erica was a very challenging toddler. She had trouble sleeping. She would not sleep. Alexandra was finished her maternity leave, and because Erica would not sleep, I would be tasked trying to put her to bed. Erica would be up till 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. There was nothing I could do to put her to sleep. And the only thing that seemed to entertain my little Erica was Katy Perry music videos, which we watched on heavy rotation to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I was getting exhausted. And it got to the point where I was sleeping now during the day and being up all night. There's times where I didn't even get to go to bed till 11 o'clock in the morning. Our days and evenings got reversed. and trying to get her to go to sleep was pure hell. To back up one moment though, so Erica was pretty healthy, didn't have any sicknesses or fevers or, anything like that. On the 1 year vaccination shots, Erica got a massive fever. And then she started getting hives and rashes and swelling, and she was on antihistamines. Was the only thing that seemed to reduce the swelling down, was giving her children's antihistamines for 1.5 years. So every day I had to give her antihistamines, or her face would swell up, her lips would swell up, and she would be covered in hives and blotches. So right away there was some strange things going on with Erica. Alex was back at work and I was taking care of Erica, and she was pretty much my full-time task because she was so demanding, and the hours that she would finally fall asleep at, or the worst thing would happen is she would have a nap during the day and then she'd wake up like at 9 o'clock at night. So she'd fall asleep, let's say around 5 in the afternoon. She'd fall asleep around 5 o'clock in the afternoon and then wake up around midnight and just be up forever. This took a massive toll on me because it was a massively stressful, and so my health really took a toll. I gained a lot of weight. I was probably at my heaviest I ever been at 6 feet tall. I was getting close to over 280 pounds. I had enough of this, and I started drastically lose weight, getting healthy, detoxing, eating clean food, did the keto diet, did intermittent fasting. I did weights, kettlebells, power walking, and I would make Erica get up in the morning if I had to put her in the stroller, and we would get out of the house. It took almost a year to reset her sleeping pattern so she was at least able to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. It took a year of effort, and in that time I lost over 60 pounds of fat. So I went from 280 down to about 220 pounds. Felt much better, had my self-esteem back, and felt good again. I decided that it was important for me to get out of the house and work again. I was kind of trapped in the house with Erica, and she was not an easy toddler whatsoever, and almost drove me to the point of insanity and making me gain massive amount of weight through aggravation eating, and this being I felt completely unregulated. So I got a job as a selling software. It was a gig with IBM, and it was a pretty stressful job. It was I would have to consult and work with large corporations, oil companies that would run massive like infrastructure, city ports. There was a nuclear power plant. So really complex, lot of meetings, lots of decision makers to deal with, very complex stuff. The job was a good experience. It made me expand. I was grateful for it, and it came to the end because it was just a contract position, which was fine because when the contract ended, I was glad that it ended. So great experience. It definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone, got some great training out of it, and learned to manage very complex projects. And I feel that skill set still helps me to this day. So at this time, we're at the 2-year mark. Erica's about 2 years old. Alexandra goes for a checkup. They give her a pregnancy test, and she's pregnant again. I have mixed emotions about it because I was pretty exhausted by Erica at this stage. But you know what? I thought if anyone needs a sibling, it is Erica. So I was happy that she was going to be getting a brother or sister, because I think it has been and it is good for her to have a sibling. So the second pregnancy was even more difficult for Alexandra. They were concerned about her high blood pressure again. That was a major concern. Her iron levels were at extreme lows. She would have to go in. I remember going to some of these appointments with her, and they would give her these iron IV drips that were just like, the thing looked like black, like tar. It was just like, it was really concentrated iron that they would give her. There was, again, a bunch of other complications that they were worried about. And it got to the point where they just told her to come in, and they delivered James 5 weeks early. So James was a preemie baby, and he was born 5 weeks early. The pregnancy itself, the labor was really fast. James has basically jumped out of Alex's belly. So the labor was quite, I don't think she was even in labor for an hour. She had to stay in the hospital for 10 days with James, and that was really the start of her deep depression. She definitely had postpartum depression. She also had gestational diabetes, and she had preeclampsia during this pregnancy. And her heart rate was through the roof. Her heartbeat would be going into the 220 zone. They were afraid that she was going to have a stroke in the hospital because that's how high her heart rate was. So when she came home with James, she took care of James, and then I focused on Erica because Erica was a lot of energy. Erica was at least sleeping better at this stage, because I really worked for a year of getting her sleep pattern to a normal state, and I was in charge of that because I could not let that sleep pattern ever go back to what it was. Being literally up all night and going to bed in the afternoon sometimes. Like, our days and evenings got reversed. Alexandra was now sleeping in her own room with James, and I was in charge of Erica, so we were sleeping completely separate now at this stage. This is the first time where I really saw her go into a really dark depression. And again, it seemed appropriate for all the things that she'd been through and her body's been through with these pregnancies and the health issues that she has had to deal with. I think Alex felt, I don't know, this is when the first time I saw, real fundamental change in her. She was more quiet, more moody. That spark that she had seemed to be gone. And I thought, she'd been through a lot. She always had iron issues. Her diet was not the best. She had a lot of food issues, and this was starting to become more and more, where she'd only eat very selective food, and a lot of it was not healthy. She drank a lot of Coca-Cola. She drank a lot of pop, a lot of coffee, and she liked to snack on chocolate and chips a lot. And being in that diabetes zone, I didn't think this was good for her. But this was just the beginning. So I took another job. Alex was finished. She was on her maternity leave, and I was going to go back to work. So an old boss called me, and this boss specialized in high-tech startups, and he had a lot of great background in Silicon Valley. He sold stuff to Amazon, but the last startup I worked with him with, it kind of ended in epic failure. So when he called me, I was actually surprised that he called me. And I really wanted to get out of the house, and I think that was probably my main drive. Again, I felt a bit cooped up, with the kids. The house was starting to get pretty cluttery. Alex was buying lots and lots of kitty stuff. When you have babies, man, there's a lot of stuff you can buy, from bassinets and toys and bottle warmers, and there's so much stuff. And big showers that she had, and then she would always be buying stuff, people giving us stuff for the baby showers, her colleagues at work. You get a lot of the duplicate items. We had, at one point, we had like 3 different strollers. I had a big stroller that had a double cedar stroller. So my life is all babies and children's accessories and baby toys and children's toys. And I needed a break from it. As much as I loved my kids, I needed to feel like an adult as well. Besides, making some money would be quite welcome. Babies and children are extremely expensive. So this was early January of 2018. James was about 1 year old. He was 1 year old. Erica was going on to 3. So this job was downtown Vancouver. This job was possibly the worst job I ever worked in my life, and the biggest mistake that I've ever made as far as choosing or agreeing to a place of employment. I won't get too much into the job, but basically it was a high-tech company, and they did a marketing type of software for the retail sector. I was assured that it was all worked out, it was all ready for market. There was already adopters that were taking this on. They had some marquee kind of customers. It was all bullshit. The thing was a complete flop and a waste of everyone's time and investors' money. It was a complete garbage product. They lied through their teeth, and it was a massive, stressful waste of time. I ended up getting extremely sick because, God, if I got that bug that I got back then, I probably would have tested positive for COVID. I don't really get sick. I've never gotten this sick in my life. It was from the combination of the stress, being downtown, having to go in and out of vehicles, because I had to be having to go see people in retail environments. So I was going in and out of people's stores, traffic, stress, and obviously exposed to bugs, right? Eating in food fairs, being in traffic, you get the idea. Probably wasn't washing my hands enough because I'm out and about all day. I got so sick, just unbelievably sick. I was sick for about 3 weeks, from throwing up, fevers, chills, just lost a bunch of weight, not good weight. And I was quite burnt out by this job immediately because everything I was told about the job was a lie. And around January, it was about January, I was at work. This is when I just started getting over being sick. I was at work. Alexandra calls me and says, "I'm in the hospital." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm in the hospital. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's just something to do with my blood pressure." And I went home right away, right, because, my kids. And And I informed my work, hey, wife's in the hospital, won't be able to make the 5 o'clock meeting. And I just got harassed by emails non-stop to the point, like, hey, are you going to make the meeting? Are you available? And I had to make an email where I CC'd everybody and says, I am not available. My wife's in the hospital. I will contact you. Like, at this point, I'm just looking at these people as liars, scumbags, don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. They have all these pedigree degrees of... To make a long story short, if someone went through every terrible job I ever had in my life and cherry-picked all the elements that I hated about that job and combined it into one job, it would be this place. So, extremely stressed out. Wife's in the hospital. I'm having to deal with this complete morons that just seem to be just... And this is a person I worked for before who I actually liked till this point. Because this person changed. Not going to really get into it. One day, I'll get into all the insane jobs that I have, but this one is number one, and I don't want to waste a whole bunch of time on this podcast that's dedicated to my wife discussing the lunacy of this job. So this job did a couple of things for me. It changed me fundamentally, really made me realize that the type of work that I did and I used to enjoy are no longer available anymore. Things change in life, and this job was kind of like the milestone marker saying, you know what? This does not work anymore. You got to do something different, or you're going to get worse morons than these people. So anyways, that job was a bust. And this January was an important milestone because I didn't find out this piece of information until Alexandra passed away. So in January, she went to the hospital because she had a stroke. She told me that it was blood pressure related. When she came back from this hospital visit, something was definitely different about her. And I just thought she was tired. She needed more rest. She needed to eat better. And and I, without nagging her, I try to encourage her the best I can. I remember one day we went to a vitamin store, got her on all these vitamins and supplements, and she took them, and I noticed a real drastic improvement in everything. Her energy levels were better. She seemed happier, but she had a hard time focusing and maintaining a direction. I noticed that she seemed to be more distracted, and she was also, now at her age, she was kind of like me in many times in my life when you realize you're in a fork in the road and you want to do something different. At this stage of our relationship, she was now in childcare for over 10 years, and she was completely burnt out of it. So she got a new job in childcare, but it was supposed to be a management position that should be running a bunch of facilities. When she told me about the job and she told me how they interviewed her, I actually told her not to take it. One of the things that has happened to me was this, is that I had pretty high paying jobs in the software industry. And I went on a lot of interviews, and I got really good at interviewing the interviewers and analyzing a company about how they interview you and what you can expect out of that company through the style of interviewing. Now, in my experience, When a company has to interview you on the first interview with a big committee, that is a bad sign in my opinion. So I said, you know what, you're going to have a lot of problems at that job because there's not a direct person in charge. There's not like a line of command, so to speak. Well, they offered her the job and she took it. And everything that I predicted came true. The person that was training her was supposed to retire. And at this stage, Alex had a bad relationship with this person that was supposed to only there to be training her. So they locked heads right away. And when she would come home, she was in these terrible dark moods. And I said to her, you can't bring this home. I'm sorry that you're going through that, but the kids are difficult. And we're having a hard time with these kids because now it's apparent that Erica has autism. So we're going through the process of all her autism diagnosis, which is a hellish amount of appointments, pediatric appointments, child psychiatrist appointments. They got to rule out is it hearing loss, cognitive, just appointments after appointments after appointments after appointments. She did eventually get the autism diagnosis. And at this stage, Alex is in this job that's extremely toxic for her. She decides to actually take a leave of absence because the amount of stress of this job is causing her major health issues. She's now having anxiety issues. She's getting medication for that. She's taking blood pressure medication. And her diet is really terrible. Her diet now consists of drinking Coca-Cola, chips, and then sometimes when I made dinner, she'll eat some of it. And then throughout the day, she's snacking on chocolate and candies and munchies, and this is not ideal. She's also, at this stage, decides that she wants to start smoking cannabis. Now, previous to this, Alexandra never smoked weed. I would buy it once in a while and she would have the occasional puff. Legalization happens, and day one of legalization, we're at a dispensary and she's buying quite a lot of weed. And I thought, well, maybe it'll be okay. She's stressed out. Maybe it'll take the edge off. Maybe, this will help her some creative ideas. I'm encouraging her to do more writing. She's good, natural, talented at writing. When we lived in North Vancouver, before we had the children, she was already getting burnt out of childcare. And she, on weekends, took a bunch of hypnotherapy courses up to being a medical hypnotherapist. That cost her over $5,000, but she ended up never ever using it. So I said, why don't you write some hypnotherapy scripts? Start a Instagram page. Start doing social media. See if you can get people interested. Maybe work with children using hypnotherapy. Just giving her ideas. At this stage too, myself, I started getting into social media. I was home a lot and I wanted to do something different myself because these insane high-tech startups that I was doing were I just never wanted to put myself in the situation that I did previous. And one podcast, trust me, I will tell you all about it because it's going to take a whole podcast to break down the pure insanity that this place, even with the straight face, called itself a business. That's a tale for another time. So focusing on Alexandra. So I was seeing her struggle with what she wanted to do for the rest of her life. She was having almost like a mini midlife crisis. She had 2 children. No, she had 3, but she had 2 children with me. Both of them were difficult. She was really burnt out of her work. She wanted to do something different, but she couldn't decide what she wanted to do. She didn't have a clear path. So I thought, well, maybe, the weed might give her some creativity, give her some ideas. Maybe she'll get into her writing, because she was a very good writer. She wrote great poetry. When I would try to come up with ideas and I said, I need a title for this, or I need a title for that, she'd come up with it instantly. And I'd be, oh my God, that's brilliant. She could have been a great copywriter. She had that ability. So the weed started to concern me because around this time, I noticed her anxiety was starting to go through the roof. She was having dark depression. She started to smoke marijuana heavy. Like she'd go to the dispensary and she'd buy like $1,000 worth of weed and just go through it. Like, she was smoking more weed than I've ever seen anybody. So when she would have these outbursts or crying fits or arguments with me, we never argued. Now we were arguing all the time. I was blaming it on the weed because it just seemed to start around the same time as she started smoking all this weed. So I was thinking, like, you need to cut back. You need to, you're getting so bent out of shape. We're arguing all the time. And because of the tension in the house, she's trying to avoid being in the house. So then I'm getting resentful that she's not helping me with the kids. Now she's out on Marketplace, on Facebook Marketplace, buying knickknacks and couches and chairs and random stuff, and and I'm just looking like, are you just wasting time so you don't have to help me with the kids? So this is causing some real tension between us. A milestone day happened that really started to change the course of everything. See, at this stage, I didn't really see anything that was like, out of concern. I just felt she was a little lost. She needed to take better care of her health, eat better, do some type of exercise, even if it was power walking, just some kind of physical activity to relieve the stress, the tension in your body. She decided that she needed to get herself assessed for autism. And then that came to a surprise. I never looked at her or thought that she was an autistic person. To be totally honest, I didn't know a lot about autism before the diagnosis of my daughter. See, I always thought, because of Hollywood, that if you had autism, you're going to be like the Rain Man in that movie of Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman counting toothpicks that fall on the ground. I think that's a severe and gross stereotype of autism. And now I'd probably find that movie pretty offensive now. It's nothing like that whatsoever. Basically, they're saying if you have autism, you're just like some kind of idiot savant that's going to be able to be master of counting toothpicks, but you won't have any need or ability to integrate with society. So when she felt that she needed to be diagnosed with autism, it took me aback, because again, we spent now at this stage we're getting close to about the 8-year mark together, and she was possibly, in my opinion, the least autistic person I ever met. Yeah, she was a little messy and cluttery, and she hated doing dishes. I just thought, honestly, she was just kind of lazy and just trying to weasel out at doing dishes. I don't enjoy doing dishes, but God, I don't like seeing them piling up. So there was things that, did bug me, like she, never would do the dishes, for example, ever. Like she did dishes twice in a decade. And the first time I just stopped her, like, to stop what you're doing. The second time she did dishes, we will get to. So she's going and getting this private autistic assessment. That was quite a lot of money. So I was a little bit, being totally transparent, I was very pissed off because I felt she was just kind of spending money foolishly at this stage. Spending a fortune on weed, just unbelievable amounts of weed. In my life, I grew up around Kitsilano hippies, Rastafarians, a lot of potheads, gamers, people that smoke weed all day. I still haven't seen anyone that smoked more weed than her. So I'm concerned because here's a person who never smoked weed, and then that's all they want to do. And our life now is actually evolving around it. It's actually pissing me off because I don't care if someone smokes a joint, but if they're smoking a joint, wake and baking, they're not going to be much help with the kids. So we have 2 kids that are pretty challenging, and she wants to be high as a kite every chance she gets to the excess. So the weed is now becoming a contentious issue between us because it's excessive. The money being spent on it is excessive, and it is now infiltrated every aspect of our life. So it is causing tension. The weed is causing tension because it's excessive. She gets the autistic assessment. I was a little bit pissed off about that, not because I wasn't trying to support her, but she's spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on weed, and now this assessment's going to be $3,000, and I truly did not see it. I didn't think that she had autism. Well, doctor disagreed with me. She got the autistic diagnosis. When she got that official seal, it did change her personality because now that's all she was focused on. And now she's all talking about, being unregulated and things like that. It was almost, to me, and I even talked to the doctor, and I'll get to the doctors after. The doctor agreed with me. He says sometimes when an adult gets an autistic assessment, they become almost like born-again Christians. That's all they want to talk about. So she started to become completely obsessed with autism, all things autism. And I said, okay, great. You have this. You lived a pretty good functional life before, and you can live a good functioning life after. I lived with you for over 8 years to this point. Other than not really helping out around the house, you were a pretty well-adjusted person. And so now the moods are getting worse. Sometimes she goes from being extremely, almost very manic states of high energy, projects, it's going to start this business, going to start doing this, going to start writing this book. I'm going to write children's books. I'm going to start a business, opening up my own daycare, and even coming up with names and ideas. And, I was all trying to be supportive. Like, if you need any help, the marketing, I'll be more than happy with that. And these ideas would just kind of fall through the wayside. And it would bother me because these ideas would be expensive. So for the first while, she was going to open her own daycare centers. And I said, that's great. All that experience that you have, put it to use for your benefit. At one stage, we were going to buy a heritage house. And when the heritage house, we were going to make it into a daycare, and the daycare was going to help pay off the house. And then I was going to do after school programs for for kids that were like preteens, like sports, working out, that kind of stuff, right? So I was excited about doing that. Well, that idea just kind of crumbled to the wayside. But in the meantime, she's buying up tons of furniture that we're going to fill this house up with. And this one woman closed down her daycare, and she bought everything from that woman's daycare is now in the house. So every time she has a business idea, she'd go and spend a ton of money on this business idea, and then would be on the next idea and the next idea, right? So I'm starting to feel concerned and frustrated because our house is now filling up with stuff, and the ideas just go to the wayside. She went to a peer romance party, where, if any ladies know what that is, I'm sure you do, they sell adult toys, kind of like they used to sell Tupperware back in the day, but now they're selling vibrators and dildos. So she decided that she wanted to sell this stuff, this pure romance stuff. So what did she do? She goes and buys $1,000 starter kit and never even opened the box. So this was quite typical. And then, of course, I'm getting upset because I just see it as money being wasted. This would cause arguments. And then when we would argue, then she would avoid me. And then when she would avoid me, I'd be pissed off at her because she's not helping with the kids. So now we're in this horrible, vicious circle. Our lives now have become completely separate. And I just feel now we're roommates looking after kids. An important thing happened in October. So Alexandra had one exceptional skill. She was an incredible driver. She was a really good driver. She drove a lot. She had, in the time I've known her, she had 3 vehicles, and on those 3 vehicles, she's probably put 250 kilometers on each car. So she had this car. It was pre-bought in 2013. It was a Kia that she bought in 2013. This is about 2019. So one morning, and this is a typical day, she would not tell me about any of the appointments until very last minute, and this would completely piss me off. So one morning, I'm sleeping. It's a Saturday. It was a week of hell. I'm exhausted, and most Saturdays I try to sleep in a little bit. She opens up, because I'm sleeping now in the basement of the house. She opens up the top door and screams down at me that there's a dentist appointment for both kids and we're late and we gotta leave, and we should have been at the dentist appointment 15 minutes ago. And of course, the dentist office is not in our neighborhood. It's in the old neighborhood where she used to live in Delta. And now we have to drive in traffic for an hour to an appointment that we're late. And I have literally 5 minutes to get ready and get the kids out of the house in the car to this dentist appointment. So I'm completely stressed out. Get to the dentist appointment. I hated this dentist office because it's one of those dentist offices that looks amazing, because the whole dentist office looks like a big, massive playground and jungle gym and toys and, things for the kids to engage in. But my daughter thinks it's all a playground, doesn't recognize it as a dentist office. So the whole dentist appointment is me chasing her around the dentist office because she thinks it's a playground. I don't blame her for thinking that, because it looks like a playground. So completely stressed out. Woke up, had 5 minutes to brush my teeth, throw on some clothes, get the kids in the car, get them to the dentist appointment, and I'm not saying all dentists are like this, but for whatever reason, the dentist, not all of them are like this, but not the dentist, but one of the dental hygienists, she's one of those people that forgets that you're a parent and that's a kid. Parent, kid, adult, kid. But talks to you in this kind of tonality, really patronizing, and asks you really stupid questions like, oh, do you brush your kids' teeth? How often do you brush your kids' teeth? Are your kids vaccinated? Just takes everything from all the stress I had, not to snap at her, but I did it. Snap. So, appointment's over. Thank the Lord. It's good. Let's go back home. I want to relax and chill. Nope. Alexandra says we have to go to North Van. So we're in Delta. We got to go to North Van. Why do we have to go to North Vancouver? Oh, I was on Facebook Marketplace and I just, oh my God, what? Oh, there's some baby alive dolls and they're a good price and I want to get them. Baby dolls. Well, why? We have in our house in the hoarding mess now. I am not exaggerating, we probably have over 50 different types of dolls, varieties of dolls, and brands of dolls, sizes of dolls. And I said, we don't need any more dolls. Oh, no, we got to get them. They're a good price. And then I said to her, okay, if we go get them, can we at least go home? Thinking it would just be like quick, get the dolls, go home. But of course, she was late to go pick them up because a dentist appointment took longer than she anticipated. And she was afraid that she was going to miss out on these baby dolls. So from Delta to North Vancouver, she's speeding like a speed demon to get these baby dolls. Where it's located, this house, it's up on Seymour Mountain. It's not like I thought, oh, maybe it's on Lonsdale, somewhere easy access. No, it's up in the mountains. So she's burning up this hill, this steep hill going up Seymour Mountain to get baby dolls. The car just automatically shuts down. Engine blows. So now I'm on top of a mountain. She puts the emergency brake on. Heavy traffic. If she takes off the emergency brake, we're going to go roll downhill. Kids in the car, they're upset. I go to get out of the car. She's screaming, don't get out of the car. We go, we have to. Someone's going to rear end us. Thank God it wasn't raining. So this was in October of 2019. We're on the top of the hill. I get out. There's these two guys and big construction worker guys in a truck. I flagged them. I asked them to help us push the car to the side so it's out of danger. Someone must have called the cops because, we're stuck in traffic. If the blinkers on the cops came, or CMP, to say what's going on, I explained to them. So while the tow truck is on its way to tow us all the way back now to Langley from North Vancouver, I jog halfway down the hill because we missed the turn, run up a cul-de-sac to get the baby dolls. We get towed back to the house, and Alexandra has her first psychotic break that I witnessed. So she went and got some weed. It was some heavy sativa. I think it was called Congolese Red, a really heavy sativa. And also, too, one of her doctors thought it was a good idea because the other diagnosis that she got was ADHD. And see, the problem is that Alexandra would go to different doctors. She didn't have one doctor that knew everything. She had a bunch of doctors, and each doctor she would say a different thing to, right? One doctor knew about the autism, one knew about the high blood pressure, the other one did her yearly lady pap smear stuff. She found another doctor locally, and she got this doctor to prescribe her Adderall, which is a pretty heavy stimulant. So first she told this doctor, that it wasn't working, because what she would do is she'd be up all night smoking weed, and then in the morning pop one of these pills and then drive to work, and then come home without any sleep and keep taking these pills, but then tell the doctor they weren't working good enough, so they'd give her more and more and more stronger ones, and two, they were combining it with dextroephedrine. So she was getting amped up on amphetamine type of drugs, smoking a ton of weed. And so when this car broke down, when she got home, she started doing dishes, and she started yelling at me because one of the contentious thing is I didn't feel she helped enough around the house. So she stayed up all night having a psychotic break while she threw away all of the dishes. And then so remember, I've been up since about 7:30 in the morning. Now she's up all night screaming, yelling, carrying on, throwing dishes in the garbage, and doing this insane power clean and rearranging everything. Finally, around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, she comes down and screams at me about how I'm everything wrong in her life. She's having a complete psychotic break. Then around 10:30 in the morning, my doorbell rings, and we got people coming to the house to work with the kids. We had they're called behavioral interventionists, and what they do is they work with autistic children. This contract that Alex got was these people would come to the house and work with the kids at your house. The problem is that our house was getting more and more and more and more cluttered, because at this stage too, Alexandra decided that we needed a grand piano too. So she bought a grand piano and had these professional movers bring it into the house. So we have a grand piano, we have every type of kids' toy, clutter, daycare stuff, tables and chairs, books, all piling up in the house. So what would happen is this: when these people would come, I would have to power clean just to make. So I barely slept, maybe slept for literally 20 minutes, if that, maybe just closed my eyes for a bit while Alexandra had a psychotic break. And the doorbell rings and people are over to work with the kids. So she went and got a new van from the dealership. And this was a problem because at least with the car, there was only so much she could put into the vehicle. Now she had a minivan to fill up. And so her day was spent going on Facebook Marketplace, filling up the van full of random items, and then bringing it back to the house and piling it up in some kind of corner, and repeat each day, doing this over and over. So then other things started to occur with her. Her health really started to decline really bad now, like really bad. She wasn't taking care of her hygiene. She started picking at herself with tweezers, her face, and then she started to pick at her toenail to the point where she had to go to a doctor and get it removed because she couldn't stop picking at it. She started telling me how she was having issues as far as gender identity. This is something that never came up before, but now it was something that she talked about quite a bit. And she also decided that she wasn't sure if she was straight or gay. And I just said, listen, I just want you to be happy. If finding another person for you is what you need to do, be happy. At this stage, I'm for anything to try to make you happy and content with herself. And then this would cause her to go into darker depressions. And then, so she went from high energy to moods that were just so dark. And then the suicidal ideation started, talking about wanting to commit suicide all the time. And then She had a severe panic attack in a Walmart parking lot where her doctor and she decided to go off the Adderall and ADHD drugs because they were really messing her up, because she was not sleeping on them, and she didn't sleep. It made things darker. So she was hospitalized a couple of times, and then one time they wanted to put her in a psychiatric ward. She actually escaped. And, the panic attacks became a regular thing. When we would argue, she would get so loud and scream. We had the police at her house 3 times in less than a month. So that was concerning. She complained a lot of being unregulated all the time. She couldn't regulate herself. It was kind of something new that I didn't really understand, because you got to remember, all the stuff that I found out after she died from talking to her doctor gave me a different perspective while I was going through this. Right? She didn't really talk to me, hey, I think I have autism, I really want to get checked out. It just kind of came like, oh, I'm getting an assessment, I'm just doing it. And so everything just kind of came out of nowhere, right? These business ideas, these, wanting to sell sex toys. No, I don't want to do that because I want to open up a daycare. So we're back to opening the daycare. Then from the daycare it would be, oh, I want to be a writer. So you got to start writing. Oh, I don't want to write. I want to go back to school and study this. So every day it was a different struggle, different thing. For one, well, I think I'm bisexual. No, I'm not. Oh, I think I have, I'm not sure what gender I am. And then, it was like a pendulum going back and forth, right? The panic attacks, the suicide, not leaving her room sometimes for 3 days, flying off the handle and having the cops come to her house because she's freaking out so bad because a can of Coke got dumped out, even though there's Coke cans all over the house, because she's buying a case of Coke every single day. I'm getting super concerned by her now because her diet is at the worst I've ever seen it. Either she's sleeping for 2 or 3 days straight or not sleeping at all. She's becoming less ability to be with the kids. This is also having a massive impact on my health because I don't know what the day is going to bring. And, after the car blew up, it was pins and needles every day. And then I got to a place where I was saying, listen, this is going to affect my health. So I had to come up with strategies of how to manage her, because that's what it became. It became how to manage a person who's having crying spells, wants to commit suicide, says horrible things to you, like because they would fly off the handle and say, I hate you. A month before she died, she said, I hope you die. But then I'd have to deal with your body. Just like really horrible, cruel things, because she would just, anything that would, there was no filter anymore. There was no filter. So, to put things in perspective, and I think it's important to tell it now because I found out this later. So, she had the stroke, which I didn't know about. So, you gotta remember, I'm going through this, I didn't even know that she had a stroke. One of her doctors sent her to a neurologist. That doctor later told me that they found a lesion in her brain, but she didn't tell me that she had that. Her blood pressure was in the 200 range, sometimes up to 220. Her doctor told me that she was going in once a week. She would forget to take her blood pressure medication all the time. And when she would take it, it would make her feel bad, especially if she wasn't used to taking it. So this created a yo-yo effect. The stimulant pills were just way too strong for her. like way too strong. She should never have taken those. So those just put her all over the place in every which way you can think. She was on antidepressants, 2 different kinds. And she took one specifically to help her sleep at night, but then she would forget to take it. And when she had severe panic attacks, she was taking Ativan. So her medication was all over the place, and she was not good or disciplined at taking it. I spoke to one of her doctors after the fact, and she said that when she first started treating her for the anxiety and depression, she was able to kind of dial everything down to 2, and that's what I saw most of her time us together. These little quirks and personality quirks that we have, they're all dialed down to 2, so they seem very minor. But for whatever reason, with the stroke and the stress and the overall physical decline of her health, it really exasperated all these mental conditions. So they were like at a 10, all of them at once. The main thing was her inability to feel just at peace. She picked at herself, she picked at her toes. She was miserable. Since the stroke in 2018, she became a person that I didn't even recognize it anymore. Physically, her facial expression was completely different. Her demeanor, her tone, she was not the same person every way. And in a lot of ways, the Alexandra that I fell in love with died in 2018. I remember I had a conversation with her that was very frank, and one weekend she was going on and on about how she was going to commit suicide and no one cares about her and no one's going to miss her. And I said, fine, okay, you're going to commit suicide. Obviously you thought about this. But have you thought how it's going to affect the people that care and love you, like your children, myself, your mother? And then she had this very frank conversation with me. She just looks at me, she goes, listen, I have something in my head and it can basically at any time just burst and I'm going to die. So you're good with the kids, you're able to take care of them, they'll be fine. And I got pretty upset with that because I never heard about anything in her head, but basically that happened. So she almost was able to almost see what was going to happen to her because no one knew about the aneurysm yet. They did find a lesion, but what they said is that through good lifestyle and health, it would be a more of a viable decision for her just to take care of herself rather than do some type of invasive surgery to try to remove it. So, in the end, when she died, it was like, I felt that finally she's at peace because she's not suffering anymore, because every single day from 2018, I felt she suffered greatly. And I'm hoping, she's at peace and at rest. I am grateful for all the good memories we had, all the wonderful times we spent together, and there was lots of them. The 2 years was very in contrast to the almost 11 years that we were together. And I think that's what makes it such a tragedy, because you think, like, how could this been avoided? How could we do something different? What could we have done? In hindsight, it's important for people to take their mental health and their physical health seriously. You see, the combination with Alexandra was a combination of her mental and physical health. She had all these underlying conditions mentally, but the physical aspects of it did make them worse because she didn't take care of her health at all. Her diet, her blood pressure, her being anemic made the mental health aspects really, really exaggerated and even worse. And she didn't seem to have the ability to put the brakes on anything anymore. Everything was just like a runaway train. And I could go on and on about panic attacks and, we're driving in the car and her having freakouts, and it could just go on. This will be like a 7-hour podcast, but I think from everything I told you, you get the idea. She suffered greatly. And for me, it took about a year to recover. I actually spoke to all her doctors, got a good insight of what went on with her. One of her other doctors believed that she also had heart disease from her lifestyle and her eating choices, and she probably also had liver issues from just drinking. Basically, she drank almost a 2-liter thing of pop, of Coca-Cola every single day, or a case of pop, chocolate, chips, salt and vinegar chips. She had high blood pressure. Everything she liked was salty. Forgot to take her pills. You get the idea. The doctor that was a psychiatrist that diagnosed her with the autism, he actually became my grief counselor and therapist because I think he was a perfect fit, because he knew her, was able to diagnose her, but he was also able to provide me grief counseling and make me understand the behavior that she was. This insight definitely helped me tremendously, because while I was going through it, not having all the pieces to the puzzle, I did not understand what she was going through, or I didn't understand how the behavior tied to everything. I didn't understand the full picture. My advice to someone now who's taking care of someone with severe mental health, like, what would I do in hindsight if I had the ability, like going through that 2 years of pure hell of not understanding and not knowing what the person, what they're dealing with. See, it's different because, like, say for example, let's say that she was an alcoholic and she's drinking heavy every day, drinking heavy booze, and then having all the effects of the alcohol. Then you would understand, oh, if it wasn't for the booze, this person would be okay, right? So at first, naturally, I just blamed the excessive weed. I'm like, hey, you're smoking too much, and it's affecting you. You're freaking out. You're panic. Your mood is all up and down the place. And yes, she did smoke excessively, and she used it as a crutch, right? But this was way bigger than any weed. What was going on with her? At the end of the day, is that she had 2 aneurysms in her head. She had a legion. She had a lot of unresolved issues that started to bubble up. The violent sexual assault, she started talking about it again and fixating on it, and that was and that, because it was unresolved, it came up then at the end, at the worst time, because she started fixating on that and getting herself really worked up and upset about it. She journaled a lot, and her journals would get darker and darker and darker and darker, and so she started to really deteriorate mentally, like really deteriorate, to the point where she had really great handwriting. To her handwriting, I couldn't even recognize anymore. So almost everything about her changed on a terrible, fundamental way.